Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Union members in Indiana join nearly 50,000 GM workers across the country, saying they're fighting for their share of the pie.
I believe in this. I mean, my lifestyle has been fantastic. My insurance is fantastic. And it's not because General Motors wanted to give it. You know, they don't want to give up anything.
And change doesn't come easy in a place that seems preserved in time. Why a massive property auction has a lot of Nashville natives worried. After a recent legal change, Indiana's newest crop has momentum, but some worry farmers might not be able to take full advantage of it.
There is a real possibility that I'm afraid a lot of people in this state are going to grow this crop this year and not have a place to go with it because they're not used to marketing a crop like produce.
Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, economists say Midwestern states, including Indiana, could take the biggest hit from the nationwide United Auto Workers strike that shut down General Motors plants this week. As Barbara Brosier reports, union members in Indiana say they didn't take walking out lightly.
Members of United Auto Workers, Local 440, stood in front of each gate at GM's Bedford casting plant this week, picketing as part of the nationwide strike.
AW 440.
Disagreements over wages and benefits led union members to walk off the job Monday at midnight. For longtime employees, it was emotional.
I believe in this. I mean, my lifestyle has been fantastic. My insurance is fantastic, and it's not because General Motors wanted to give it. You know, they don't want to give up anything.
There's another issue many on picket lines across Indiana say is important to them: the use of temporary workers in GM factories. It's something they say has become more common over the past few years.
We've had some temporaries in our facility between 5 and 8 years. They work right beside us on the lines every day. They do the same jobs that we do for a lot less money.
The strike had an immediate impact on other companies, like those who supply GM parts. Many had to stop operations. UAW members say they wish they didn't have to be on the picket line this week, but they have to fight for what's best.
We took many concessions back in 2009 timeframe when they went through the bankruptcy to help make this company profitable. We went to bat for them, and it's time they come to bat for us too.
And Barbara Brosier joins us now for just a bit more. So where do these negotiations stand right now?
Well, Joe, we're in the 5th day of this strike, and there's still a lot of unresolved issues. The top negotiator for UAW sent out a letter saying as much to union members yesterday, that they're still working through a lot of issues. And at the top of their minds is pay. That's something that they're really pushing for. GM did have an offer, we know, earlier this week that it would invest about $7 billion in factories in the U.S., but we know about $2 billion of that would be coming from other sources, and that means that not everyone in those factories would be paid a top union wage, and that's a huge issue from the union.
So any idea of how long this can go on?
It's really hard to say, but local union presidents that I spoke to throughout Indiana say that they're prepared to be on the picket line as long as they need to be. They're not going to back down until they get a contract that they're satisfied with.
And we have about 20 seconds left, but how does this impact Indiana's economy, too?
What we've heard that suppliers, people who supply GM parts to others, they have had to shut down as a result of this strike. Some of those employees are really upset because they say, I'm not getting a paycheck. I may have to file for unemployment. Union members tell me they didn't take this decision to strike lightly, and they understand that it's hard for multiple people involved, but it's what's best.
Barbara, thank you very much. Well, young people in Indiana and across the globe are taking to the streets today to call for more aggressive action on climate change. Research from Indiana University shows they may very well change people's attitudes about the climate movement. Your researchers surveyed bystanders before and after two rallies, the March for Science and the People's Climate March. And after the marches, they found bystanders had a more positive view of the people marching.
Which suggests the potential that these marches might help to diffuse a potential backlash that could arise the next time that climate policy or climate action is being considered.
Geiger says climate marches might also help to unite people across party lines. They found that those who watched a march were more optimistic about people's ability to come together to work on big problems like climate change. This was especially true of bystanders who got their news from conservative sources. Students and other activists will gather for the strike in front of the Indiana State House, as well as in Muncie, Fort Wayne, Lafayette, Newcastle, Indiana University, Butler, and Purdue. Now for headlines, we go over to Barbara Brosier, who has the latest on this week's top stories.
Thanks, Joe. Attorney General Curtis Hill says he's working with the Illinois Attorney General on an investigation of the remains found at the home of Dr. Ulrich Klopfer in Illinois. The doctor performed abortions in Indiana before his license was suspended in 2016. The investigation comes after more than 2,000 medically preserved fetus remains were found on Klopfer's Illinois property. He died earlier this month. A new report says payday lenders drained more than $300 million in financing charges from some of the poorest Hoosiers over the past 5 years. The Indiana Institute for Working Families conducted the research and found that most of Indiana's payday loan storefronts are in predominantly low-income neighborhoods.
We know that 60% of Hoosiers take out another payday loan on the same day that they pay theirs off. We know that by a month out from the payday loan, it's about 80% have taken out another payday loan.
Fraser says Indiana has a 36% interest rate cap on regular loans, but lenders can charge fees that double the interest rate before breaking the state's loan sharking law. Legislators carved out an exemption for payday loans, which means their rates are even higher, topping out at 391%. She says the Institute for Working Families will continue to push state lawmakers to take on payday lenders next year. A controversial lending bill that would have created a new type of loan with annual percentage rates of up to 167% died during the 2019 session. The state is getting closer to rolling out a system that will allow sexual assault victims to track what happens to their forensic exam kits. A 2017 review found about 2,500 rape kits in Indiana were untested for unknown reasons. The Institute is modeling the new tracking system after an electronic claims system it already has in place. The new sexual assault kits contain a barcode, and victims will be able to access information about their kits online.
The individuals themselves will be provided with a specific identification number and a claim number that's not publicly available. The system itself will reside in a pretty highly protected technology environment.
McDonald says they're using about $350,000 of existing federal funding to pay for implementation costs. He doesn't have a set date for when the online system will go live, but says it will be this fall. Festival ordinances were not on the agenda in Spencer this week, but residents still packed the Owen County Courthouse to support holding events on the courthouse lawn. Residents had previously voiced concern about county commissioners shutting down the events on the courthouse grounds after a form letter surfaced describing Spencer Pride's Fest as unfit for children. But Spencer Pride organizers say the claim is blatantly untrue, adding that they're always careful to keep the festival family friendly. At the meeting, commissioners did approve 2 festivals for this year, but Spencer resident Andrew Whitaker says he's waiting to see what will happen with Pride Fest.
I think it's a little bit about buying some time. You know, these are events that is just going to happen this year until supposedly at the end of the year when they'll have the ordinance ready to vote on.
The president of the Owen County Commissioners says they plan to have something ready for the public in the next couple of weeks. Meteorologists predict farmers will continue to see the kind of weather issues that challenged them this season. Many farmers had to delay planting this year or not plant at all. Forecasters say in the future, heavier rains will be the norm in the winter and spring, with drier conditions in the summer months. A renewable energy company is aiming to start construction later this year on a solar farm over about 1,800 acres, about 20 miles from Terre Haute. Chicago-based Invenergy Solar Development says it wants to start construction work by the end of this year. The proposal calls for nearly 580,000 solar panels on what is mostly farmland in Sullivan County. Invenergy says it wants to be generating electricity by the end of 2023. It will be selling the power it generates to electric utilities. The expansion of the Monroe Convention Center in downtown Bloomington is moving forward. The project stalled a few times the past year because city and county officials couldn't come to terms on how to work together. A work session earlier this week included the city and county council, the mayor and county commissioners. As Joe Wren reports, the discussion focused on funding.
City financial advisors estimate it will cost $37 million to fund the expansion and pedestrian connectors to the existing center and new hotel. Another $7 million would pay for renovating the existing convention center. Funds would come from the county food and beverage tax, which went into effect February of last year.
It looks like, in fact, it will support a bond of over $40 million. So that strength of the income from the food and beverage tax was encouraging.
Officials centered in on the proposed $15 million 500-space parking garage. Advisors say tax, district revenue, or other city funds would pay for the garage, but some city council members aren't convinced subsidizing another downtown garage is necessary.
It's nice to speculate about, we could run a 24-hour shuttle or whatever, but people are going to expect to park here. That's just the reality of the marketplace.
Officials say the garage would help draw more conventions and act as an incentive to bring in a hotel developer. Hamilton says design and construction would take 3 years and suggests using the original steering committee to move forward. For now, city and county councils will come up with their own agendas for another meeting at a time they choose. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Joe Wren.
Family members of 1930s gangster John Dillinger have submitted another application to exhume his body from an Indianapolis cemetery. Dillinger's family first applied to exhume his remains in July as part of a planned History Channel documentary. But the exhumation did not occur, and the History Channel dropped out of the project. Family members said they have evidence Dillinger's body may not be buried in Crown Hill Cemetery. Cemetery officials object to the exhumation, and one of the outlaw's living relatives sued the cemetery, seeking a court order to gain access to the grave. A hearing is scheduled for October 1st. Concerns about the spread of misinformation on social media led Indiana University's Observatory on Social Media to create new software. The software, called BotSlayer, monitors social media sites like Twitter to alert users of suspicious spikes in activity or trends. Observatory officials say the BotSlayer software was designed to help people see if news and the accounts promoting it are authentic.
Now people have literally hundreds and hundreds of different sources from which they can get news, whether on their social media feed or their phone, news apps, and so on. And so the problem, of course, is that people don't know whom to trust.
Bots are automated social media accounts that can create the false impression something is trending online. BotSlayer uses software from a couple other programs to track how tweets are shared and how likely it is that an account is a bot. WonderLab Museum is closed until early October to install a new infant and toddler exhibit. As Tyler Lake reports, it's the museum's first major renovation since it opened on Bloomington's West 4th Street in 2003.
While some of the exhibits at WonderLab have evolved over the years, the museum hasn't done a major renovation since it opened in 2003. That changes this week when WonderLab shuts its doors to install Science Sprouts Place, an interactive area designed for kids ages birth to 3 years old.
There'll be an area called Tummy Time that provides a space with interesting things to look at that encourages children, encourages caregivers to help their children learn to build the strength that it takes to move their bodies into new positions so they can see new things and acquire new information.
And the development opportunities don't stop with the kids. Much of the new exhibit will also target the people who bring them to the museum.
Infants are learning from the moment they open their eyes. We want to have a lot of information for caregivers about infant brain development and social and emotional development.
The layout of other existing exhibits will also be different when the museum reopens, and WonderLab is expanding one of its most popular experiences.
We'll have 2 brand new exhibits, bubble domes and foam fountains. So there'll be new things in the bubble area as well.
WonderLab will remain closed for construction until October 5th. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Tyler Lake.
And Joe, this new permanent exhibit is just one way that WonderLab says it's trying to expand its reach and reach families with infants and a lot younger kids who might not otherwise come into the museum.
Yeah, and you can't get rid of the bubble exhibit.
Absolutely, it's one of their most popular.
Thanks, Barbara. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. With nearly a third of Nashville's commercial district up for sale at a single auction, Brown County officials are moving to protect their historic downtown. And Hoosier farmers are getting creative with the new crop as corn and soybean prices fall. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
The WTIU WFIU news team connects Indiana to the world. We bring you the top news of the day on radio, TV, and online. We round up the stories that have people talking each week and dig deep into the issues that affect your community the most. The WTIU WFIU news team is where you are and telling your story.
In a time of change, where can you find in-depth reporting and thoughtful analysis? Washington Week on PBS. Join moderator Robert Costa.
When I was at the Capitol this week, I encountered the same.
And a panel of award-winning journalists.
You're seeing a divided nation, and you're seeing.
For insights and perspective.
Tonight there was a key development in the Senate.
You won't find anywhere else.
What a week.
Washington Week.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, for 70 years, growing hemp in Indiana was prohibited. The federal government classified it as an illegal drug, but that's changed, and now more Hoosier farmers are experimenting with the crop. Reporter Brock Turner joins us now. Brock, what led to the change?
Yeah, Joe, the 2018 Farm Bill effectively gave Hoosier hemp farmers the green light by decriminalizing portions of the crop. The Indiana legislature then set up a program, and a small number of farmers are currently growing on a trial basis throughout the state. But more are interested, and they're expecting the number of possibilities next year when the trial period ends. With the profitability of corn and soybeans tumbling thanks to things like tariffs and weather, farmers are looking for an opportunity to boost their profits. More than 150 farmers gathered in for sales earlier this month to learn how to grow hemp next spring.
Our goal has been to bring this as a diversified income stream to the farmers.
Jim Benham hosted the event. He thinks there's plenty of potential in the crop and shared lessons he's learned during his first year growing it. Benham says the process for harvesting hemp fiber, which is used for creating products like clothing and hempcrete, takes fiber strands from the stalk of the plant. Farmers harvest it with traditional machinery, just like they would hay. After cutting it down, it will dry in the field.
You can make clothing from it. There's a company up in northern Indiana that's, not sure what car company it is, but they're making door panels. They've been importing it for a long time, made out of hemp. Plastic bottles, everything that we've been dealing with plastic for the last 100 years that we've got scattered all over the United States and oceans everywhere. We can make plastics out of hemp now, and that's all biodegradable, so folks that throw that away, we'll go back to nature.
Harvesting hemp grown specifically for CBD production or seed production is different, though.
What we are doing is we are taking the floral biomass, the flowers of that plant, and we are pulling out all of the cannabinoids that that plant produces.
There are several varieties of hemp. Hemp raised for CBD and other oils more closely resembles a vegetable. The leaves of the plant are harvested and its oil extracted. While farmers can get more money for this kind of crop, it's a labor-intensive process that often requires a lot of hands. On top of that, there isn't much equipment or an accepted way to use pesticides on those fields. Plus, the cost of acquiring seeds are much more difficult than corn or soybeans. Despite those challenges, many farmers say they're seriously considering putting a small crop in the ground next spring. They cite declining commodity prices for corn and soybeans as a primary reason.
Our goal is to make sure that we get the infrastructure in place to let this happen so our farmers can grow this crop so that they have this opportunity.
The infrastructure Petty is referring to are the distributors and producers of raw hemp. Someone has to take the product from those fields and turn it into a more usable form.
Run that through a machine that would actually strip all the leaves off of it. Then we take them leaves after they've been dried.
Chris Moorman does just that. He processes hemp for CBD and says farmers can store hemp once it's dry for 6 to 9 months. But there is a small window to make sure the crop does not mold.
You need infrastructure to be able to get it out of the field into a spot where it is quote-unquote shelf stable. Now, obviously, you don't want hemp sitting around on the floor for 5 years, but you can get it to a point where you've got a 3, 6, 9 month window to process it.
Moorman says he doesn't have the capacity to produce more hemp or plans to start processing other varieties. He and other experts caution farmers to make sure they understand what goes into hemp and how marketing this crop is different.
Get with some people who understand what this looks like, because this is not like corn and beans where I can drive to the elevator and even if I don't like the price, there's a price to be paid. There's a real possibility that I'm afraid a lot of people in this state are going to grow this crop this year and not have a place to go with it because they're not used to marketing a crop like produce.
But Moorman agrees with most farmers who have already started planting hemp. He thinks there is a real market available and money to be made.
I think it's really important that farmers use their, innate conservatism, they use some prudence, and they do some very specific due diligence on who am I partnering with, what does my return look like, what does a downside case look like. In addition to the fact, agronomically, this crop is very, very different than what almost anybody in the state's grown in, living memory.
Farmers who want to grow hemp have to fill out this lengthy contract with the state of Indiana before they can get approved. The state seed commissioner will review the applications this winter and can share them with law enforcement and other agencies if necessary. Regulators say these permits are necessary to ensure farmers aren't growing too much hemp or that they're using those fields to disguise prohibited plants like marijuana.
All right. Brock, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
The Nashville Town Council took the first steps toward expanding an ordinance last night that requires a review process before the demolition of any historic buildings. Now, the changes would expand the definition of historic structures to include those 50 years or older. As Barbara Brozier reports, an unprecedented auction of commercial properties is sparking the proposed changes.
There's always plenty to look at when you're in downtown Nashville. But one sign seems to be catching everyone's attention this week.
Who's going to buy it? What are they going to do?
16 properties from the estate of Andy Rogers will go up for auction October 30th, and many of the buildings house several shops. No one can remember anything quite like this happening before, and that has them worried.
It could possibly have a major impact on property values. We have a lot of commercial properties in town, but they very seldom go on the market, and this is about a third of the commercial district.
Well, I'm very concerned about the historic properties coming down, but more importantly, I fear for the tenants that may not be able to continue in those situations as the rents may go up.
John Lawrence's gallery is in one of the buildings going up for sale. He's been a tenant for more than 40 years, but he's actually optimistic about the future.
I think there will be some changes. Some of the changes that have happened in this town in the last couple of years have been very positive, like our new music theater.
Jimmy Dean Coffey is CEO of United Country Real Estate, which is running the auction. He says it's important for someone to have the opportunity to invest in the properties and properly maintain them, something the Rogers Trust can't do.
I don't foresee someone coming in and buying all of Andy Rogers' properties and come in and change the look and appearance of Nashville. I can't guarantee that, but I don't foresee that.
One notable building that won't be on the auction block is the Nashville House restaurant, which closed last year.
The Nashville House has been kept in the family by one of the beneficiaries of the trust.
It's unclear what the specific plans are for that property. The overall uncertainty surrounding such a large portion of this quaint downtown is hard for people in a place where time seems to stand still. There's not much they can do but wait.
All you can do is cross your fingers and hope for the best.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Barbara Brozier.
The bidding will take place October 30th at the Brown County Historical Society. And the Bean Blossom Bottoms Nature Preserve is reopened after severe weather damaged it this summer. After a tornado hit the area, parts of the boardwalk, decking, and lumber needed to be replaced, but most of the structure remained intact. The trail loop was finished ahead of schedule. A small portion of the trail known as the Spur is still being cleared and won't be finished until late October. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.